What is a scientist? The word scientist in general term, used to describe someone who researches and examines various aspects of the physical world in order to attain a better understanding of how things work and function. There are many specializations of scientist, and depending on which field of study one chooses to follow, the work can vary greatly. Each scientist, however, follows the scientific method, which is a strict set of rules that ensure all new discoveries are factual and not just speculation. Where do scientists work? A scientist can be found almost anywhere: universities, government facilities, company labs, for-profit companies, in space, on ships, underground, in hospitals, in private practice and in forests. Pretty much anywhere in the world, and in any industry, there are scientists working in their particular field.
Baking soda volcanoes and potato batteries are a good introduction to science. These people took it a little further. Welcome to WatchMojo.com, and today we're counting down our picks for the top 10 influential scientists. For this list, we're focusing on people who had a lasting or significant influence on both science and daily life. Number 10. Charles Darwin. Charles Darwin's 1859 book on the origin of species created a sensation that still reverberates throughout the world. Darwin's theory of evolution outraged many religious leaders and challenged assumptions about the world, but its principles are now accepted as fact and borne out by scientific inquiry. Modern evolutionary theory has itself evolved, but its roots are clearly recognizable in Darwin's brilliant theory. Number 9. The Wright brothers. While there may be other aviation pioneers who also deserve recognition, Orville and Wilbur Wright are generally hailed as the first to successfully create a manned flying machine. This accomplishment made possible the development of the entire aviation industry. The world was made smaller by the airplane, as people and goods could travel great distances in a short amount of time. World economy, tourism, and the defense industry were never the same. Number 8. Marie Curie. The word radioactivity was conceived by Marie Curie, and her work in that field is what she is chiefly remembered for, as she created the theory of radioactivity and developed techniques for isolating radioactive isotopes. The first woman awarded a Nobel Prize, which she won for both physics and chemistry. Curie also discovered the elements polonium and radium and helped develop the X-ray. Number 7. Nikola Tesla. Thomas Edison gets all the glory for his work in electricity, and while he was a good scientist, Nikola Tesla was even more important. Tesla's groundbreaking work led to the alternating current electric power system, which was crucial in industrial development. A man of many interests, Tesla also made significant contributions to the field of robotics, nuclear physics, ballistics, electromechanical engineering, radar, radio, theoretical physics, and computer science. The man definitely got around. Number 6. Leonardo da Vinci. Although more celebrated as an artist, Leonardo da Vinci also had an astounding scientific mind. For example, his Vitruvian Man drawing is an example of ideal human proportions. Da Vinci also made numerous designs, few of which were realized, for such items as flying machines, tanks, calculators, and plant studies. He even created an early basic theory of what is now called plate tectonics. Who knows how science would have been altered if more of his scientific work had been published during his lifetime. Number 5. Archimedes. The greatest mathematician of ancient times, and one of the greatest of all time, Archimedes was also a physicist, inventor, astronomer, and engineer. He created the principle by which the volume of an irregularly shaped object can be determined, which has had enormous influence down through the ages. Some of his designs have been disproved, including one which outlined a way to set a ship on fire using mirrors, but much of his work stands the test of time. Number 4. Johannes Gutenberg. Many of the scientists on this list spent their lives devoted to scientific exploration. Johannes Gutenberg is here because of one major invention. Gutenberg came up with the concept of mechanical movable type printing, which, in one fell swoop, altered the world of printing and, with it, the dissemination of information. Mass production of printed material suddenly became a reality and remained the biggest advance in communications until mass media and the internet. Number 3. Isaac Newton. The story of an apple hitting Sir Isaac Newton on the head and the scientist all of a sudden discovering the law of gravity is oversimplified. But hey, it's a good story. Newton's accomplishments include the Principia, which many consider the most influential book in scientific history, and which laid out the famous 3 laws of motion. Modern physics and engineering owe him a huge debt of gratitude. Number 2. Aristotle. Famous Greek philosopher Aristotle is equally renowned as a scientist. Indeed, many consider him history's first genuine scientist. Geology, biology, physics, medicine, psychology, and meteorology were among his many passions. Although many of his conclusions do not stand up to modern science, his efforts laid important groundwork that influenced scientific belief through the Renaissance and into the Enlightenment. Modern science would not be where it is today without his early contributions. Before we reveal our top pick, here are a few honorable mentions. Number 1. Albert Einstein. With his rumpled clothes and whacked-out hair, Albert Einstein may be the most lovable scientist on our list, but he's number 1 because of his accomplishments. His theory of relativity revolutionized the field of physics, and his discovery of the photoelectric effect led to what we now know as quantum theory. Practically everyone knows Einstein's famous E=mc² equation, even if we can't really explain it. We just know that it changed the world we live in.
Hello! Let's get started on the lesson. An inventor is a person who creates something new. American inventors changed the way people live many years ago. In 1838, Morse introduced an electric telegraph with a special code system to help people send messages. He invented Morse code. Messages sent by Morse code contain dots and dashes to show the alphabet letters, numbers, punctuation marks, and other special characters. For example, this is how you would say hello in Morse code. Years later, in 1876, Alexander Graham Bell invented the first telephone. He discovered a way to transmit or send sound across electrical lines. People could now use the telephone to talk to each other from long distances. Thomas Edison invented the light bulb in 1879. Until then, people used fire as a main light source. Edison's bulb used electricity to create light. It was more powerful and less expensive than candles. This is because one light bulb could illuminate or light up an entire room. Centuries later, the light bulb is still a common household item all over the world. Orville and Wilbur Wright invented the first successful airplane in 1903. Early inventions such as gliders and aerial steam engines failed. Thanks to the Wright brothers and their clever design, people can travel the world by air. Let's review. An inventor is a person who creates something new. Samuel Morse was the inventor of a telegraph system called Morse code. People could use these codes to send messages to one another. Alexander Graham Bell discovered a way to transmit or send sound across electrical lines. This led to his invention of the telephone in 1876. Thomas Edison invented the light bulb in 1879. It was powerful enough to illuminate or light up an entire room. After many failed attempts, the Wright brothers invented the first successful airplane in 1903.
Foreign scientists. Albert Einstein, 1879 to 1955. Albert Einstein was a German-born theoretical physicist who developed the theory of relativity, one of the two pillars of modern physics. His work is also known for its influence on the philosophy of science. He is best known for his equation E equals mc2, which states that energy and mass matter are the same thing, just in different forms. He is also known for his discovery of the photoelectric effect, for which he won the Nobel Prize for Physics in 1921. Aristotle. Aristotle was a Greek philosopher and polymath during the classical period in ancient Greece. Taught by Plato, he was the founder of the Lyceum, the Peripatetic school of philosophy, and the Aristotelian tradition. Aristotle is a towering figure in ancient Greek philosophy, who made important contributions to logic, criticism, rhetoric, physics, biology, psychology, mathematics, metaphysics, ethics, and politics. Isaac Newton. An English mathematician, physicist, astronomer, theologian, and an author who is widely recognized as one of the most influential scientists of all time and as a key figure in the scientific revolution. He developed the principles of modern physics, including the laws of motion, and is credited as one of the great minds of the 17th century scientific revolution. Johannes Gutenberg 1395 to 1468. Johannes Jensfliss zur Leyden zum Gutenberg was a German goldsmith, inventor, printer, and publisher who introduced printing to Europe with a printing press. Gutenberg's printing press made it possible to manufacture large numbers of books for relatively little cost for the first time. Books and other printed matter consequently became available to a wide general audience, greatly contributing to the spread of literacy and education in Europe. Nikola Tesla. He was a Serbian-American inventor, electrical engineer, and futurist who is best known for his contributions to the design of the modern alternating current electricity supply system. Leonardo da Vinci. Leonardo da Vinci was an artist and engineer who is best known for his paintings, notably the Mona Lisa circa 1503 to 1519, and the Last Supper 1495 to 1498. His drawing of the Vitruvian Man, circa 1490, has also become a cultural icon. Galileo Galilei. Galileo di Vincenzo Bonatti da Galilei was an Italian astronomer, physicist and engineer, sometimes described as a polymath, from Pisa. Galileo has been called the father of observational astronomy, the father of modern physics, the father of the scientific method, and the father of modern science. Of all of his telescope discoveries, he is perhaps most known for his discovery of the four most massive moons of Jupiter, now known as the Galilean moons, Io, Ganymede, Europa, and Callisto. Louis Pasteur. Louis Pasteur was a French biologist, microbiologist, and chemist renowned for his discoveries of the principles of vaccination, microbial fermentation and pasteurization. He is remembered for his remarkable breakthroughs in the causes and prevention of diseases, and his discoveries have saved many lives ever since. Marie Curie. Marie Curie is one of the most famous scientists that ever lived. Her contributions such as the discovery of radium and other key elements help us out every day, especially when getting an X-ray. Mania, as she was called, was born Maria Sklodowska in Warsaw, Poland on November 7, 1867. Charles Darwin. Albert Einstein was a German-born theoretical physicist who developed the theory of relativity, one of the two pillars of modern physics. His work is also known for its influence on the philosophy of science. He is best known for his equation E equals mc2, which states that energy and mass matter are the same thing, just in different forms. He is also known for his discovery of the photoelectric effect, for which he won the Nobel Prize for Physics in 1921. Local or Filipino scientists. Gregorio Zara. He invented the two-way television or video phone in 1955 and patented it as a photophone signal separator network. Dr. Zara became known for discovering the physical law of electrical kinetic resistance, called the Zara effect in 1930. Felipe Alviola. He is MNH's curator for small and volant mammals. He graduated from the University of the Philippines Los Banos with a bachelor's degree in biology and has completed a master's degree in biology and wildlife studies also from the same university. Philip worked for several years as a field biologist with many conservation organizations in the Philippines, pursuing a special interest in the diverse species of bats before he was eventually hired as a research associate by the MNH. Benito O. Giuliano. He is known Filipino expert in organic chemistry and known for his outstanding contributions to the chemistry and technology of rice and rice food products, which rationalizes breeding strategies for rice grain quality all throughout the world. Giuliano's important research activities in collaboration with scientists in related disciplines had produced socio-economic impact amongst the rice-eating countries of the world. Jeffrey Perez. He is hailed as one of the outstanding young scientists by the National Academy of Science and Technology, NAST, for his contributions in the field of geology. He led the active faults and paleoseismic studies along the Philippine Fault, and was also part of the team that mapped and conducted paleoseismic studies along the Valley Fault system that traverses Greater Metro Manila area and other active faults in the Philippines.
What does a scientist look like? When we think of a scientist, we often imagine a crazy-haired man wearing goggles in a lab coat carrying a test tube in a laboratory. There's a good reason we think this. Albert Einstein was a famous scientist who laid the foundation of modern physics and changed views on space, time, mass, and energy. He is often seen in pictures with wild, crazy hair, making funny faces. If you dress up in a scientist costume, usually you'll look quite similar to Albert Einstein. But is this what a scientist really looks like? In this video, we will explore different types of scientists, what they study, and what they might look like. The pictures and costumes you've seen about scientists usually show you a chemical laboratory because of the cool science tools or equipment. Some tools are magnifying glasses, microscopes, notebooks, balance scales, rulers, and thermometers. A scientist working around potentially dangerous materials does need protective gear, like goggles to protect their eyes, gloves to protect their hands, a lab coat to protect their body in case of spills, and shoes that cover their toes. Safety comes first when experimenting and discovering in science. But did you know there are many types of scientists? A food scientist works to analyze the nutrition in food for safety and the creation of new food products. A hydrologist is a scientist who collects and analyzes water to study issues such as pollution and groundwater. A gemologist studies beautiful gems. They classify gems and discover new characteristics and the physical properties of stones collected in the field. A geologist studies the solid and liquid matter that makes up the earth. They also study forces that shape the earth's surface, such as wind, rain, and volcanoes, and how they change rocks and landforms over time. An ecologist uses their scientific abilities to solve environmental problems. They investigate anything that affects nature's ecosystem, like wildlife, habitats, and pollution. A paleontologist studies the history of life on Earth as reflected in the fossil record. Fossils are the remains or traces of organisms like plants or animals that lived in the past and are preserved in the crust of the earth. An astronomist studies objects in the sky, such as stars, planets, comets, and galaxies. A zoologist studies animal life. A botanist studies plants. An entomologist studies insects. An oceanographer studies all aspects of the ocean, from marine life and ecosystems to waves or seafloor geology. A meteorologist studies weather and makes weather forecasts. So you can see there are many different types of scientists, and they all look different. They don't all look like Albert Einstein. But each scientist studies and experiments with the world around us. You can be a scientist too. A scientist sorts, collects, questions, experiments, wonders, discovers, guesses, observes, thinks, invents, tests, classifies, measures, asks, and records. A scientist is you. Here are some activities as we go on our way to be a scientist. Start a science journal. This journal is a way of collecting and keeping track of all your observations and the things you've learned throughout the year. What does a scientist look like? On the first page of your journal, draw a picture of you. What are some things a scientist would wear? What type of scientist would you like to be? What are some tools a scientist might use? Draw and label tools you have learned about. Some examples might be magnets, beakers, or a microscope. It's important to be safe as a scientist. What might a scientist do or wear to be safe? What are the 5 senses? How are our senses important when learning about the world around us? We use our senses, sight, smell, sound, taste, and touch, to work together to let your brain know what is going on around you. They help keep you safe by warning you of any danger. And in your science journal, draw and label the 5 senses. Go on a nature walk. A scientist observes the world around them. Look at the sky, the plants, and the rocks. Use your senses. What do you hear or smell? What do things feel like when you touch them? Record your observations in your science journal. So in conclusion, science rocks. There are so many things to explore in science, so scientists look different. Even you are a scientist, asking questions and exploring the world around you.
Types of scientist. Food scientist. Food scientists and technologists use chemistry, biology, and other sciences to study the basic elements of food, discover new food sources, and research ways to make processed foods safe and healthy. Hydrologist. A hydrologist is a scientist who researches the distribution, circulation, and physical properties of the Earth's underground and surface waters. They help environmental and other scientists preserve and clean up the environment, as well as search for groundwater. Gemologist. A gemologist, also known as a jeweler or gem expert, works with and identifies precious stones and gems. The main tasks of a gemologist are carefully studying certain gems and stones, using microscopes and other magnifying equipment, and determining the gem's make, value and authenticity. Geologists. Geologists is a scientist who studies the solid, liquid, and gaseous matter that constitutes the Earth and other terrestrial planets, as well as the processes that shape them. Ecologists. Ecologists study nature, including fauna, flora and other organisms, with a focus on how these organisms interact with one another and the environment in an attempt to preserve and protect species and ecosystems and solve environmental issues. Paleontologists. A scientist who studies the history of life on the Earth through the fossil record. Fossils are the evidence of past life on the planet and can include those formed from animal bodies of their imprints body fossils. Astronomer. A scientist in the field of astronomy who focuses their studies on a specific question or field outside the scope of Earth. They observe astronomical objects such as stars, planets, moons, comets and galaxies in either observational, by analyzing the data, or theoretical astronomy. Zoologist are biologists who study a variety of animal species. Those studies can include researching animal behaviors and characteristics, and how they interact with their ecosystems. Zoologists may be involved in research, animal management, or education. Botanist, a scientist who specializes in plant biology, and an expert on varieties of vegetation including algae, grass, cacti, flowers, moss, trees, shrubs and edibles, including herbs, fruits and vegetables. Entomologist, a type of scientist who focuses specifically on the study of insects. They examine growth, behavior, nutrition and how they interact with plants. Additionally, they design and implement research plans to support the selection of new insecticide products. Oceanographer, an oceanographer explores the world oceans to understand its processes and mysteries. This includes plate tectonics, chemical and physical properties, marine life, ecosystems, geology of the seafloor, and ocean circulation. Meteorologist, meteorologists study the Earth's atmosphere, particularly climate and weather, in order to forecast weather conditions.
Michael and Eddie conduct an experiment in the laboratory. They make sure that they apply the scientific attitudes and values they have learned in their science class so that they will obtain accurate results. What are these scientific attitudes and values, and why are they important? Scientific attitudes and values are important when carrying out scientific investigations. These are adopted by scientists to gain and apply knowledge wisely. Let's look at some examples. Curiosity is a desire to know the answers to questions that a scientist cannot understand and always tries to seek, inquire, and discover. Cooperation is important in carrying out scientific investigations to produce good work and prevent conflicts. Honesty, especially in recording and analyzing data, should be observed to ensure validity of the results and acknowledge the work of others. A scientist should actively do the tasks assigned and be responsible for the safety of themselves, others, and the environment. A scientist should be a critical thinker, seek evidence to support conclusions, and question the inconsistencies in the evidence presented when they are doubtful. Open-mindedness should be observed, and a scientist must consider other opinions or new ideas, concepts, or criticisms that may help in the scientific investigation. A scientist should be persistent and should not easily give up, even if they fail several times. A scientist should be humble and admit mistakes that they make and recognize the help from others to obtain a better judgment or conclusion. In addition to these scientific attitudes, there are other values that should be practiced when carrying out a scientific investigation. These are realizing that scientific knowledge is a means of understanding nature, appreciating and practicing a clean and healthy life, appreciating the balance of nature, being polite and respectful, and being grateful to God for the gift of nature.
Values of a good scientist. Scientists all over the world are usually driven to uncover more of life's mysteries through careful observations, experimentation, and sound analysis. They base their preliminary processes on models or ideas, some of which are products of accidental discoveries. A valid and systematic method of investigation is the result of alertness, curiosity, and persistence of the scientific mind. Scientific attitudes and values includes the following. Curiosity. It is the desire to know the answers to questions that a scientist cannot understand and always try to seek, inquire or discover. Cooperation. Cooperation is important in carrying out scientific investigations to produce good work and prevent conflicts. Honesty. A scientist must be intellectually honest. This attitude allows a scientist to recognize the work done by other scientists before him or her. This attitude is also shown by reporting data truthfully. Responsibility. A scientist should actively do the task assigned and be responsible for the safety of themselves, others and the environment. Critical thinking. A scientist should be a critical thinker, seek evidence to support conclusions and questionably inconsistencies in the evidence presented when they are doubtful. Open-mindedness. A scientist is open-minded. Open-mindedness is an attitude that allows a scientist to look at other possibilities. evaluate, validate, and accept other people's idea towards a question. Persistence. A scientist must be persistent and should not easily give up even if they fail several times. Humility. A scientist should be humble and admit mistakes that they make and recognize the help from others to obtain a better judgment or conclusion. Activity A. Directions. Fill in the table below. Activity B. Directions. Match the vocabulary words on the left with the definitions on the right.